Welcome to another edition of 805 Sports Talk. Week 4 was a lot of fun and high school football season. Kenny, you and I saw Pioneer Valley come away with a 32-28 win in the Main Street Classic. It was a great game. I know a lot of people are focused on the ordeal with Kenneth Huberry and the fan running on the field, but we'll kind of break down all of what we saw Friday night. Pioneer Valley with the, big comeback victory. I think Matthew Garcia was great. At quarterback, Emmanuel Alcantar had some big plays. Nick Robledo made some big plays in the running game and passing game. And, of course, the incident. What did you take away from Friday night's event?
Well, you and I saw a great high school football game and some more. I was taken completely by surprise when the young man ran off the field.
Looked like the wrong kind
There
of
is
motion.
a man on the field with a flag.
Good story about
Uh-oh, he was just flattened. Wow.
Pioneer
I don't
Valley
know who
player.
did, but he better get off the field or the Pioneer Valley guys are not happy.
I'll tell you, Huberry checks in at 170 pounds. If someone a lot bigger had hit the young man, he might not be serving what he says is his suspension from school at home. He might be in a hospital bed somewhere. So I think he'd be well to consider that. Okay, maybe Huberry did go overboard with the hit, but you don't run out to a field and interrupt the game like that. It was like the perfect storm. It was a close game, rivalry game. The players were amped up as it is. I'll tell you, I can only recall one other incident in all the years that I've been covering sports, more years covering sports than I like to admit. It was in the early 2000s. I believe Brian Waitge was a senior at Arroyo Grande High School. Remember him? Hancock grad, had a brief try with the New York Jets. I thought this one was a lot worse, actually. Rigetti was playing at Arroyo Grande, and I believe an Arroyo Grande player was actually injured and being tended to when I believe it was a young man dressed, I'm assuming it was a Rigetti fan, dressed like a Rigetti warrior with with the shield and the face gear and so forth, and he ran on the field, but he didn't get hit, I think only because no one had a chance to. He ran well away from any players, and he ran at an angle so he could hightail it out of there quicker. He ran at an angle towards the quarter of the end zone. The young man who ran on the field with the Santa Maria flag, of course, ran smack into the middle of the players. That was quite something. If the young man is serving a suspension, I have no reason to believe what he told you is not true. He earned the suspension he got. He does owe people an apology. It was something interesting, frankly, the wrong way. I thought, frankly, that I hope never to see again.
Yeah, I've heard pretty much 50-50 people saying, he kind of got what he deserved running on the field like that, and other people saying, maybe Kenneth Huberry shouldn't have hit him. I don't know where I stand on that.
I think he just reacted.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think, he did go overboard with the hit, but he reacted. He was just reacting.
Lorenzo, how do you feel about the whole thing?
Well, he went on YouTube, and he's going to be a social media sensation for all the wrong reasons. But, I have a story to share that happened in Tulare, city of Tulare. Tulare Western are two big rivals that play every year, and Tulare Union, which used to be known as the Redskins, they had a teepee where players would run through the teepee before games. Well, Tulare Western students actually ran on the field, destroyed that teepee, and the very next day, $50,000 check. So, to me, it's like what you guys saw on Friday is probably the craziest thing I've seen in all my years of following football at the high school level. But, I'm with Kenny. I think this young man at Santa Maria, I hope sometime down the road, whether if it's 5 years, 10 years down the road, he could look back and he can ask himself, what exactly was I
what was I
thinking?
doing?
Because, you're unfortunately a local celebrity for all the wrong reasons, and I hope that one day he comes to the realization, and I hope he teaches some of the kids. He even goes to his alma mater soon and says, don't do what I did. Support your team. You can be as vocal as you can, but just don't do anything stupid.
Yeah, and I just hope that it doesn't overshadow the performance that Pioneer Valley had. They did come away with the 32-28 win. They're 3-1 on the season. Matthew Garcia, I think, had a real gutty performance. He went down a couple of times with an injury, and then he was just, you know, shrugging off defenders throughout the night to keep that Pioneer Valley offense flowing. And then they come out with a big win, and they're now 12-0 all time against Santa Maria in varsity football. So the Panthers stayed perfect. I know I talked to a lot of the Panther players before the season, and they were already thinking about that game, and they really, you know, hold those bragging rights where they don't want to be the first team to lose to Santa Maria. So they kept that going. I think Santa Maria also played really well. Blake Truitt, that might have been the best game I've seen him play all season. He was great passing and running, limited the turnovers, no turnovers, and you know, I think the incident really did impact the game. Very next play, Kenneth Huberry came up with the interception near the end zone as the Saints tried a little trick play on a reverse pass. So I think that incident did have an impact on the game, and it seemed to maybe fire up Pioneer Valley as they came out with a 32-28 win.
I would say, yeah, it did have an impact on the game, but remember, though Huberry did get the pick, Santa Maria was the one that scored first after that whole incident. They were up 21-19. They went ahead 28-19. I thought more importantly, the incident was what happened a couple times after a holding penalty wiped out a big Santa Maria first down that would have put them at the Pioneer Valley 34 when they were clinging to, I think it was a 28-26 lead, and if they don't score, at least they have a good chance of grinding down the clock, and instead they have to give up the ball. And then Garcia, in all the years I've covered sports, I think he made one of the best plays I've ever seen. Really, he was in the grasp. I don't know how he did it. He was flat in the grasp of tacklers, and he dumped the ball off to Emmanuel Alcantar, and then Alcantar scores from, I believe, 25 yards out on the next play.
Yeah, so it was just a crazy night, Friday night, and hopefully we'll have another one of those this Friday night as Santa Maria plays at San Ynez. That's a non-league game, and I'll be there in San Ynez to broadcast that one live starting at 6:45 p.m. with the pregame show. Kickoff is at 7, and we'll see if the Saints can bounce back. They're going to take on the unbeaten San Ynez Pirates. Moving over to Arroyo Grande, you know, maybe the Eagles are the hottest team in the area, you know, maybe discounting Lompoc because Lompoc's always on fire basically. You know, AG came out with the 38-20 win over St. Joseph. St. Joseph has lost 2 in a row with that Bishop Diego 1-point loss, and now losing at Arroyo Grande. They host San Luis Obispo Friday night. You know, it seems like Mike Hartman and Arroyo Grande, they've really turned that thing around with these 3 straight wins. Lorenzo, were you surprised at all that AG had a win and it was a convincing win over St. Joseph?
Yeah, I was really, really surprised looking at that score, the way AG manhandled a very deep St. Joseph team, especially on the offensive end now. For Arroyo Grande, I mean, you're definitely where you need to be now. I mean, starting the year 0-2, obviously that was the last thing on their minds, but now they're entering Pac-5 play on a winning streak at 3-2. And, you know, realistically, they have the best record among the Pac-5 teams. I mean, Righetti's a close second right now at 2-3, but, you know, with St. Joseph, I mean, you have to really wonder what's going through the head of Jim Chaval because, I mean, yeah, he's a veteran guy, but he's new to the head coaching scene. I mean, how do you get your guys to regroup after that devastating 1-point loss to Bishop Diego and then to turn around and get manhandled against Arroyo Grande? Plus you have Lompoc and San Ynez still on the horizon. I mean, how do you get out of this hole?
I think, you know, their next opponent is a great way to get out of that hole facing San Luis Obispo at home. You know, that could really help you, you know, get right at this point in the season. And they played, and I think the Knights do deserve a little bit of a break taking on San Luis Obispo. You know, it's obviously not just going to be, you know, a cakewalk for them. They're a Pac-5 league team. They have some pride, but, you know, St. Joseph has played easily, I think, the toughest schedule in the area. So things ease up a little bit with the San Luis Obispo game. So I think they'll get right Friday night against the Tigers and then go into LPL play with a little bit of momentum. Kenny, you surprised at all?
Yes. I have to admit, I was wrong about Arroyo Grande. From their first 2 games, I thought they were in for a very bad year, but they've got their groove on over there. They've got their running game going. They have 2 reliable runners, James Gilmett and their quarterback, Caden Byrne, I believe. Defense has been solid. I actually thought, despite the score, the defense actually had some moments against Lompoc, but it was the offense that I thought really struggled. But obviously they've got that straightened around. St. Joseph really has been the hardest team, the 805, for me to get a read on. I mean, sometimes they really look good, sometimes they've really struggled. San Luis Obispo, obviously it's not a gimme win for them, but yes, it should be a much easier game than what you, I think, accurately said has been the toughest schedule in 805 that they've played. I think they will be in there in the playoff hunt in the LPL, as they always are. So we'll see how things develop.
Yeah, I'm not going to take too much out of that loss. I think playing at AG is always a tough endeavor, and they have had a brutal schedule. So I don't think that's too disheartening for the Knights, and I think they'll do just fine against Slow, and then I think they'll do pretty well in the LPL. And I think maybe that San Ynez St. Joseph game might be closer than we thought, but still got a few weeks to get ready for that one. And Lorenzo, Friday night was your first chance to see Lompoc in action live. What did you take away from the Braves? How did they look? Just pretty much dominating Rigetti.
Yeah, they're not only deep, but their composure as well. Because the very first offensive series, Lompoc actually had 3 penalties, putting them in a very, very long 3rd and long scenario. But Ryan Morgan responds with a 40-yard reception, putting Lompoc inside the goal line. And I mean, it was just smooth sailing from there. But we talk a lot about Toa, who made Sports Illustrated and the faces in the crowd, but they got a rising star, and he comes from a Pac-12 household as well, Leandre Coleman. I mean, he was a feature story this week on my end. He's already leading the team in tackles.
Got fantastic genes.
Exactly, and not only that, Kitty, I mean, the fact that Andrew Jones brought this up, teams are running away from both Ruben Cortez and Jelani Henderson. They're picking on Leandre because he's a sophomore, but Jones is letting it be known, you guys are going to regret that, because Leandre's a very short tackler and he has a very high football IQ, and it's proven.
Yeah, the thing with Lompoc, it's like, who do you choose to defend, or who do you choose to exploit? And you can't really. You mentioned Ryan Morgan, he steps up. Leandre Coleman has stepped up this year, so it seems like just everybody at Lompoc steps up. They just have so many pieces there, and it just doesn't go away. It's never rebuilding. It's always reloading.
I think Leandre. Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And not only that, I mean, they have a relatively young defensive line. I mean, they lost Trenton Carter and Isaac Black, who are terrific on that defensive line. Juan DeLuna is considered the old guy on that line as a junior, but he really set the tone on the first defensive play. Just really shot the gap and just exploded into Damian Robles. So, I mean, they just, year in, year out, I mean, Andrew Jones finds a way to have guys like in store ready to show out.
I was impressed with Leandre Coleman both times I saw him, and I think he's played well all year. So I think he's a rising star in his own right.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to see Lompoc yet this year because I've been doing our broadcasts, and like we've been saying, it's a little difficult to do the Lompoc games early on in the season because they are lopsided, and we saw that Friday night with a 42-0 win for the Braves over the Warriors. Warriors are still doing okay, I think. They maybe will be there in the Pac-5 somewhere. I think they should beat Slow. I don't know how they'll do against Atascadero and Paso Robles, but I think they're definitely trending in the right direction.
I will say, I did talk to Ed Herman, and credit to Ed Herman. I mean, he is very approachable after every game, and I asked him this question. Paso Robles is struggling, so is, Arroyo Grande. Is the Pac-5 winnable? And immediately, he was very optimistic. He knows that top to bottom, the Pac-5 has had teams that are still trying to gain its traction and footing. So he knows that this year he could find peace and confidence knowing that his guys are actually right there in that race.
I think the Pac-5 is winnable for Rigetti this year, actually, with the amount of the league is down overall and with the amount of improvement that Rigetti's made. I think they've improved a lot.
On to the San Ynez Valley. The Pirates are coming off their 41-7 win over Templeton. We mentioned it earlier in the show. The Pirates will be hosting Santa Maria, who's reeling a bit, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's a close game. San Ynez has been dominant. They had a big win over Templeton on the road Friday, yet they dropped a couple spots on their poll again. Seems like they're just struggling to find footing in those Division 10 polls, although they're really not that important. The Pirates are just focused on making the playoffs, and to do that, they'll have to do...
My top 10 seems to change every week.
Yeah, the Pirates will have to do really well in LPL play to have a shot at making the postseason this year. You surprised at anything you've seen from San Ynez so far this year, and what do you think they'll do against Santa Maria on Friday night?
Not at all. I do want to mention this, and I know you're probably going to be glued to this. I mean, it's unfortunate that they probably won't see the field, like they won't go line up against each other, but Dustin Gregg and Blake Truitt on the same field, I mean, count on a lot of points, count on a lot of plays being extended, and Greg, to his credit, I mean, he stepped in for Mike McCoy, who was stellar in the San Ynez uniform, and he actually broke his school record. It didn't take long for him to do that. I mean, 6 touchdowns last week against Templeton. It was a record that only stood for a year. Not only that, Gabe Pilato at 6'2", 280 pounds. I mean, Josh McClure loves this guy. He really sets the tone for that defense. It was actually against Nipomo. He had 3 forced fumbles from his nose tackle spot, but, really, really curious to see how Santa Maria is going to respond after the back-to-back losses to rivals, Pioneer Valley and Rigetti. So I almost feel like that they're going to look at this game like it's personal, like they want to make sure they establish that momentum heading into Northern League play.
Yeah, it's going to be a great matchup, that quarterback matchup Friday night, and I'm excited for that. I'm also excited to see that San Ynez defense. They really haven't allowed too many points this year, so I think that's going to be tough to see how Truett and the Saints respond and take on a defense like San Ynez, who has been pretty vaunted. I know they've allowed like 15 yards in one game, just allowing 7 points to Templeton, who put up 71 points against Cabrillo. So I would love to see that Santa Maria offense versus San Ynez defense matchup, and I think that's going to be a good one. We saw Santa Maria Friday night. Kenny, how do you feel they're going to respond? Coming off that tough loss where they had a lead late, do you think they're going to come back? Do you think it's going to be a little bit of a challenge to rise to the occasion after having such an emotional loss on Friday?
As far as effort and heart, I think they'll be there. I think San Ynez's size is going to give them a lot of trouble. San Ynez has some size, and to me, it looked like Santa Maria just has a small defense. I thought, Pioneer Valley's bigger. I thought Pioneer Valley just wore them down some late in the game. And as I said, I think that's going to be a tough challenge for the size factor. I think it's going to be a tough one for the Saints to overcome. They seem to, as far as their offense, yes, Blake Truitt's great. But they seem to be doing what I thought they were doing the early part of last year, relying an awful lot on Truitt. I thought they were able to get more multifaceted later on. That helped them, but they had a really good inside running game. Of course, that went almost nowhere against Pioneer Valley. I think that they gave up on that very early. It just wasn't getting anywhere. But if they rely strictly a lot on Truitt again, I think it's going to be a challenge for them.
Yeah, I think someone needs to step up there. I think Truitt may be the most valuable player to his team at this point in the season. Although the Saints, aren't perfect on the season, they have suffered some losses, but everything that they're getting has been from Truitt this year. I think someone has to step up in the ground game. He's able to run, but that's usually on scrambles and sometimes designed runs where he'll just hold the ball and use the running back as a decoy. So I think if they get a more traditional ground game going, they're going to do a lot better. And Truitt, I don't know how he does it week in and week out, where he runs for 100, throws for at least 150. So he's got to be tired at this point in the season, about 5 games into the season. But he's been incredible, and I think Santa Maria, I think things will get a little bit easier for them once Northern League play. And if they go 3-0 in the Northern League, I think everybody will kind of forget about their preseason where they've lost to Pioneer Valley, they've lost to Rigetti as well. So I think the Northern League is going to be really where their emphasis and where their season is either made or broken in that league play. Sticking with a Northern League team is Nipomo, and the Titans have gotten off the schneid with a win over Cabrillo. Cabrillo continues to be winless on the season. Lorenzo, you surprised at all that Cabrillo is still winless at this point, and Nipomo was able to get his first win against the Conks?
Regarding Cabrillo, I'll admit I'm shocked to see that they're still searching for victory number 1. I mean, I know, as I've been saying, it's hard to transition to a first-year coach, let alone a guy who has no ties to Cabrillo and has a plan in place where it's really going to take 3 or 4 years to get it off the ground. But, the moment that I saw the score against Templeton, that signified that there's something wrong right now with the state of Cabrillo with this year's team. But regards to Morro Bay, I really wouldn't sleep on Morro Bay because it was last week they pulled the upset against McFarland, a team that was 3-0, and a McFarland team that's actually coached by a veteran in Casey Quinn. So, to me, it's still not going to be an easy game for Cabrillo.
Yeah, and I think the LPL is going to be even tougher for the Conquistadors this year. The LPL is shaping up to be a really strong league up and down. We mentioned Lompoc, of course, but then you got St. Joseph, Santa Ynez, and Pioneer Valley right there. So I think this is a really strong year for the LPL, and it's going to be tough for Cabrillo to beat.
Very hard time.
Yeah, I don't see Cabrillo beating anybody in the LPL this year.
To AJ Pateras' credit, he has taken the high road. I mean, most coaches or most teams, when they're 0-5 and they're getting blown out just about every game, there's a lot of frustration, almost to the point where they don't want to talk to anybody. Pateras is still very approachable. I mean, he's still kind of his normal self when he's at the round table. I mean, he still will talk to Josh McClure, talk to me, talk to anybody else who's in there, and just have a normal, casual conversation. So I don't think he's too fazed by this 0-5 start, but, you know, you still have to wonder about the players, particularly the seniors on that team.
Yeah, I think some people maybe put too much emphasis on wins and losses. When you're running a high school football program, there's a lot that goes into that, and it's just 5 games in. I don't think anybody should be, pushing the panic button or getting too worried about the state of Cabrillo football at 0-5. I think there's a lot of positive signs coming out of that program with, the way they're raising funds, they're putting a lot of effort into the program. Their off-season program was really solid this year. They seem to be training early on in the morning throughout the season, so and the numbers I think are good, so I don't think it's at the point where you're going to start freaking out that Cabrillo's 0-5. They can start doing better next season, and this is forgotten about. So it's just 5 games in. I don't think it's anything to really worry about. So we'll see, and we'll see how Nipomo does in the Northern League, if this kind of gets them on the right track as Northern League play gets closer and closer. I think they still have the game with AG, which is always a tough battle. I think that's going to be a tough one for them. But they've certainly ran through a gauntlet, in preseason play, and I think they're going to be ready for the Northern League. And I think that Santa Maria Nipomo game is going to be a good one again this year when that comes along later on in the season. And we're going to switch it up to the 8-man side. Orchid Academy suffered its first loss of the season, but I think the Spartans moved up from 4th last week in the rankings all the way up to number 2. And the team that beat them, Faith Baptist from Canoga Park, is number 1 this week. We were kind of expecting Orchid Academy to be number 1 last week, but they're number 2 this week after being number 4. I know there's a lot of positioning and shuffling around, but you surprised at all, Lorenzo, after what we saw them do against Mojave, that the Spartans suffered their first loss to Faith Baptist, but they're still ranked 2nd in the division.
Yeah, I'm not too surprised they dropped that low. I mean, obviously the Mojave victory does hold merit, but credit to Darren Miller going on Twitter and saying, I'll be the first to admit we didn't play our best game, but we're going to rebound. So, and you know what? This next opponent, Kate, that's actually the one opponent those players mentioned. They couldn't wait for that game. I mean, there's a little bit of a rip between Orchid Academy and Kate, and so now they get the game that they've been wanting. So I would imagine that you're going to see a ticked-off Spartans team.
And that's Friday night at Santa Maria High School. I believe that is Orchid Academy's homecoming game. So look out for that one. If you are in, looking for some 8-man football, you'll get a chance Friday night, but you'll also get a chance Thursday night as VCA has a Thursday night football game at home against King's Christian. The Lions are 1-3 on the season, and they're going against a King's Christian team that's 3-2 on the season. So they've already played 5 games. I think that's going to be a close one. Should be a tight game. We haven't seen too much of VCA this year, but P4 Tier does always get his guys to play. And coming on later next month is a reunion ceremony that the Lions are putting together. It's been 20 years since they won their CIF championship in 1997. P4 Tier is the AD at VCA, and he was the coach of that team when they won it in 1997, I believe. So a lot of history there for VCA, and that's coming up on October 13th. So they're still looking for former players or coaches or anyone who was involved with that team to kind of reunite, and they're going to have a little ceremony October 13th, and I think that is their homecoming game. So that's all we got for this week. So be sure to tune in Friday night as I'll be in Santa Ynez. Pirates are hosting the Saints. We'll see if the Saints can get back on track or if Santa Ynez will stay undefeated. Kickoff is at 7 p.m., but we'll be going live at 6:45 p.m. Thank you guys for watching 805 Sports Talk.